Hey everyone, welcome back. Ready to dive in.
Absolutely.
Today we're tackling a principle that I think a lot of us have heard of, but maybe haven't fully explored.
Yeah.
The 80-20 principle. 80% of the results come from 20% of the effort. We're really going to crack this one wide open.
It's a good one.
It is a good one. And to help us with that, we're looking at Aidan Hornsby's notes on Richard Koch's book, The 80-20 Principle.
Classic.
Right, our classic. And Hornsby takes this idea and says, look, this isn't just about business. This is about work, happiness, relationships. It's kind of about everything. Right?
Yeah, it is. And it's deceptively simple. That's what's so interesting about it to me.
Okay.
Because it kind of upends this deeply held assumption that the more effort you put in, the more reward you're going to get out.
Right, so this isn't your dad telling you to work hard.
No, this is about working smart.
Okay, so how do we work smart? Because I'm all about that.
It's about identifying, I think, the highest impact activities.
Okay.
The things that really move the needle.
So not everything is created equal in terms of our effort.
Exactly, and Hornsby uses this great metaphor from the investment world.
Oh yeah, tell me about that.
He says, a tiny percentage of your investments might drive the vast majority of your returns.
Right.
And just like with your investment portfolio, that can be true in other areas of your life as well.
He doesn't just stop at the finances.
No.
He's like, let's bring this into our relationships.
He says only a small number of your relationships drive the vast majority of your happiness and your success.
Oh, that's interesting.
So how do you nurture those relationships?
How do we identify them and how do we nurture them?
That's the question, isn't it?
Yeah.
I mean, he talks about, these are the people who believe in your dreams. They challenge you to grow. They support you.
It's like surrounding yourself with your own personal cheer squad.
Yeah, but they're not just cheerleaders, are they?
No. They're also giving you that tough love.
They're holding up the mirror.
Right, when you need to see it.
Yeah.
This makes me think I need to do some reflecting on who's in my life and who's,
It's easy to, I think, spread ourselves too thin.
Right.
We can't be everything to everyone.
Totally.
But we can show up fully for the people that matter. I think that's maybe the takeaway there.
Right, and you know what? That actually is a good segue because Hornsby doesn't stop there. He's like, let's take this to time management, which, let's be honest, this is a struggle for everyone.
Oh, yeah.
So when we're looking at the 80-20 principle applied to time management, how do we wrangle that beast?
Yeah. Well, I mean, imagine if you could figure out what tasks are eating up 80% of your time, but they're only yielding 20% of the results.
Yeah, oh my gosh, if only.
That's the goal, right? And then once you figure that out, getting rid of them, he actually gives a whole list of low-value and high-value activities.
Okay, like what? Give me some examples.
Well, he talks about constantly checking your email or, attending unproductive meetings.
Oh my gosh, yes.
Or even doing work that you're just not very good at, even if you think you should be doing it.
That's me. Yeah, sometimes, right? You think, I've got to be good at this, but then you're just like, this is painful.
Yeah, right. Exactly. It's like, why are you forcing yourself?
Okay, so those are the time sucks.
Yeah.
What are the things that we should be saying yes to?
It's about prioritizing the tasks that are aligned with your goals, your strengths, the things you enjoy. When I read that in his notes, I thought, it's not just about efficiency. It's about aligning yourself with what matters.
So it's kind of like that whole work smarter, not harder thing, but in our daily life.
Exactly.
Yeah. Instead of just checking things off the list, it's like every action should have intention behind it.
Yes.
This actually reminds me, he also talks about the idea of aligning your actions with your purpose.
He does, and that's when it starts to get really interesting.
Okay, so we've talked about our personal productivity, happiness, how we spend our time.
Right.
But this also obviously has huge implications for the business world, right?
Oh, absolutely. Yeah.
So Hornsby, he doesn't shy away from that.
No, he doesn't.
He really tackles how businesses can kind of go wrong if they don't take these principles into account.
Yeah, he basically says that most companies have a completely flawed strategy because they haven't really embraced this idea.
It's so funny because I feel like so much of self-help business advice is be positive, rah rah. And he's just no, you're doing it wrong.
He's cut it out.
I cut it out.
You're wasting your time. But he does it, in a very articulate and well-reasoned way, I think.
Well, and he gives examples.
He does.
Instead of spreading yourself so thin, trying to, cater to every single person and do all the things.
And be everything to everyone, yeah.
You've got to focus on, what he calls the vital few.
The vital few,
So, the vital few customers.
Right.
The vital few products.
The activities, yeah.
It's basically that laser focus we were talking about, but like on a grander scale.
Yeah.
Like, how do you, as a business, make the biggest impact with what you're doing?
And he has a really great example of this. He talks about how, a tiny percentage of your customer base is probably driving the vast majority of your profits.
Right.
And yet most businesses treat all customers the same.
Oh, that's so true.
And so he's like, no, you need to identify those high-value customers and, like, nurture those relationships.
It's like knowing who your VIPs are.
Yes.
Right. And being okay with that.
Yes.
Not being like, but I want everyone to be a VIP. He's like, no, focus your energy.
It's okay if not everyone's VIP.
Okay, I love this. Now, this actually brings me to something else, because he talks about the Bezos rule.
Yes.
That's what is the Bezos rule, and what does Jeff Bezos have to do with the 80-20 principle?
Okay, so this is a really interesting one. So the Bezos rule, as Hornsby calls it, he's pulling it from a quote from Jeff Bezos, where he says that most decisions should probably be made with somewhere around 70% of the information you wish you had.
Okay, so not waiting for all of the information to come in.
No, because if you wait for 100% certainty, you might miss the opportunity.
Because you'll be waiting forever.
Exactly.
Nothing's ever going to be perfect.
You're never going to have all the information, so it's about being decisive, I think.
Oh, I love that. Okay, so gather enough information. Don't let perfect be the enemy of good, as they say, and then make a decision and move forward.
Yes, exactly.
Okay, so we're talking about business here, but this also, I feel like, really applies to even just like our personal negotiations, which we do all the time, right?
All the time, yeah. Whether we realize it or not.
Whether we realize it or not, we are negotiating.
Yeah.
So how does the 80-20 principle play into that?
Well, he actually says that in most negotiations, only a handful of key points really determine the outcome.
So it's like figuring out what really truly matters and not getting bogged down in the weeds.
Exactly, and not sweating the small stuff.
Right.
And what I think is even more interesting is he actually says you can use the 80-20 principle almost as a negotiation tactic.
Okay, now you got to tell me more about that.
Okay, so he talks about creating a list of what he calls spurious concerns.
Spurious concerns?
Yeah, so these are issues that seem important, but they're actually irrelevant to your main goal in the negotiation.
So it's like a decoy.
Yes.
Like you're putting it out there and you're like, this is very important to me, but it's really not.
Exactly, yeah. So you're basically creating these bargaining chips that you're willing to concede on.
Oh, that's so smart.
So you might offer these spurious concerns as like a trade-off, right? To get concessions on the things that really matter to you.
Oh my gosh, that's brilliant. So you're basically steering the conversation in the way that you want it to go without them even realizing it.
Exactly, yeah.
Oh my gosh, I love that. You know what? And this actually, it reminds me of what we were talking about before about like our time management, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
And how we were saying, like, identify those low-value tasks and get rid of them. It's kind of the same principle here.
It's the same thing.
But we're using it in this negotiation tactic, which I think is so smart.
Yeah.
And I think it really highlights how this principle, it's not just about business, it's not just about time management.
It's a life principle.
It really is.
Yeah, it can be applied to so many different areas.
It's about understanding that, like, not all effort is created equal.
Yeah.
And by doing less, but doing the right things,
Yes.
you can actually have so much more of an impact.
You can achieve so much more.
I love this. Okay, before we wrap things up, what would you say, what's the essence of the 80-20 principle? If someone's listening to this and they're like, okay, I need to remember one thing from this whole conversation, what's the thing?
You know, it's funny you should ask that because I was just thinking about that. It really is about intentionality, isn't it?
Okay.
It's about realizing that we don't have to be perfect at everything. We don't
Right.
have to be amazing at everything. We just have to find those 20% of things where our efforts really make a difference.
That move the needle.
Exactly.
Yeah, whether that's in our personal lives, our work lives, our relationships, like where can we have the biggest impact?
And it's not about obsessing over the numbers, right?
Oh, right.
It's not like you have to have a spreadsheet,
Right.
but it's just a lens, a
Yeah.
way of looking at your efforts.
Yeah, like where am I putting my energy?
Yeah,
And is this actually giving me a return on that energy?
exactly.
Yeah. I love this. Well, expert speaker, this has been so insightful. Thank you for, I feel like we really took a deep dive on the 80-20 principle.
We did.
This is one of those things that, like, I've heard about,
Yeah.
but I feel like now I can actually, like, apply it. So I appreciate you taking us there.
It's my pleasure. Thanks for having me.
Absolutely. And listener, as you go about your week, we would love for you to think about what are those high-impact activities for you? What are the things that you can maybe say no to so that you can say yes to the things that really matter? And until next time, happy exploring.